Hey everyone, this is Jane with Barlow Herbal, and happy Sunday, March 2nd of 2025. Now, I had some really great journaling thoughts come in, and I'm excited to share where this morphed to this week because it started off with a simple journal gratitude idea of I'm so thankful for my gut instinct and how it's led me through my entire adult life and even when I was a child. You don't really realize what you're doing when you're a kid, but when you become more strategic with listening to your intuition and your gut, you start to realize what a gift it is. And I listened to a podcast this week with Joe Rogan. He had Thomas Campbell on. And I've been following Thomas Campbell's work for a really long time. This is the first time that he's been on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I was like, wow. So I listened to it. It was almost 3 hours. It took me a couple days to get through it. I like to do that when I'm exercising or multitasking. But one of the things that he talked about was the intellect versus our intuition. And it was exactly what I had been thinking about in my places of gratitude at the very beginning of the week. And so I thought, oh my goodness, I'm just going to expand on this idea because to me, it's so important for us to not only nurture our intellect, but to nurture our intuition. So this is what I wrote at the very beginning of the week. It's time to release our intellect, our ego, and our expectations, and just let it flow. Let experiences, love, and this life, day by day, just let them flow. We need to stay active and proactive. So I always think to myself when I think I just am going to let life flow. I'm going to let things happen and play out the way they're supposed to. It almost sounds like, well, I'm just going to sit back and let things happen. But that is not the intention of letting things flow. The intention is to stay proactive and active, but that let things flow how they're supposed to while tuning into that amazing intuition and gut instinct that we all have, right? So we need to stay active and proactive. Remember that I am a piece of the whole. Remember that I'm a piece of the whole. Not just rotating in my own little world and affecting the people in my own little physical sphere. I am literally a piece of the whole. And I mean that on a higher level than just a physical level. I'm a piece of the whole consciousness, God's source, So this body is simply my avatar through this experience. Stop wanting things so hard, okay? Wishing, hoping, praying, focusing on, making it happen. I really think one of the best examples of this is when we start to realize and we hear over and over and over again how powerful it is to meditate. And I've been guilty of this in the past. And sometimes I'm still guilty of this. When I sit down to meditate, I try to force myself into a meditative state. And what I've realized is that it's not about forcing or making or hoping or wishing or praying that something is going to happen. So it doesn't matter if it's meditation or whatever. So just let things flow with zero expectations. In fact, this is one of the things that Thomas Campbell talked a little bit about was a lot of times that he's been doing all the work he's been doing. He's got the things he coaches and teaches people to do. And at this point, he's trained thousands of people to learn how to go into deep meditative states and do what used to be called astral projection or out of body experiences or whatever. They want it so hard that they can't get it because your ego is taking charge and your intellect is taking charge. So for example, what I wrote is meditating, breath work, even diet, the desire to stop bad habits. It's like we so bad think, okay, on Monday I'm going to stop. I just blew it this weekend, but on Monday I'm going to eat clean. I'm going to drink plenty of water. I'm not going to have any alcohol. I'm going to not have any sugar. I'm going to get up and I'm going to exercise. And from here on, I'm going to, we want these things to happen so badly that we don't just let them flow and we don't just let them happen. So it is about being active and proactive. But then what I wrote about this, make good decisions in each moment. So instead of saying, I'm going to get up Monday morning and I'm going to be perfect and I'm going to make sure I walk every day, and I'm going to eat clean every day. And that's it. I'm done. And those are, that might be good. A good thought process, a good place to flow. But then the thing is make every decision you have to make, instead of looking out, you're going to be depriving yourself from here on out. Think, okay, I'm in this moment. I have a piece of, I have some eggs to eat, or I have a donut for breakfast. Make a good decision. Have the eggs, or whatever it is that your choice is. And then when you have another decision, might be a few minutes later, might be an hour later, make the next decision a good one. And every decision that comes at you, just make the next good decision. So make good decisions in each moment. Then make another good decision in the next moment. Let it flow. Okay? I am a piece of the divine consciousness. Remember that. And then I wrote this: that thought alone should be enough to just keep this beautiful hum going of this experience that we are all having, right? That should bring utter peace and contentment. That thought, no matter what's happening in your own life, in your own situation, no matter what is happening, that should bring you utter peace and contentment. I can pour out only love in every moment. So then what I decided to do is I thought, okay, I want to really, really, really think about the things that would make an impact on my intuition versus my intellect. Because think about what happens when we're really, really young. Our intellect is nurtured. It's nurtured from almost when we can start interacting. Let's see how smart and how much information we can feed the little human that we're raising or growing or whatever. And then we put them in school, and then we go to grad school, and then we go to another school, and then we read all these books, and all of those things are good. But the thing is then our intuition, which is actually stronger than our intellect when we're born, we have this innate intuition. What happens is that never gets nurtured. It never gets talked about, and it might in some families. And it might get nurtured when you get older, when you start to learn, oh, this is a guiding system for me. But for the most part, what happens is then you hear something that might be out of the ordinary, and there's something about it that feels right. Okay, so think about that. I'm hearing this information, and oh, that feels like truth. But then your intellect, which is super, super strong because it's been nurtured for so many years, it will stamp you down. It'll say, no, that can't be true because of this logic and this logic and this and this and this, and your intuition goes, oh, and it backs down because it's not strong enough. And this was a little bit of a metaphor that Thomas Campbell used in a little bit of that same vein. So I thought, okay, let's talk about the intellect versus the intuition, but let's talk about it in how do we strengthen our intuition, okay? So I wrote down some ideas. So the ideas I wrote down, I wanted to say why these ideas are important, how it works, and then a couple of action steps for each of these points, okay? So we need to remember this first, that our intuition doesn't shout at us, and it doesn't give us these big loud billboards. It is a whisper. It's a gut instinct. It's a feeling. And this is where it gets so dismissed so easily, is because we think, oh, well, that's just a feeling, and that doesn't mean anything. But that is such a powerful thing, okay? So then I wrote this: if the mind is overloaded, think about what's happening in our modern world with all the distractions, all the worries, all of the external noise, okay? If our mind is overloaded with that, all of these little whispers that we get from our gut are completely overlooked. We don't even, a lot of times, we won't even hear it, and we're not even paying attention. And I believe it gets us into all kinds of trouble. Things that we would have avoided, maybe, things that we would have done differently, whatever. So what we need to realize is that stillness creates the space for intuitive insights to actually come and surface up just naturally. So if you can disconnect, let me expand on that. So this is why being in stillness, this is why it works. When we engage in things like intentional stillness, I'm intentionally disconnecting from my phone, my laptop, my computer, a podcast in my ear. I think about all the people that I see every single day, people with earbuds in. And it's always input, always, always, always. That's a total distraction. And I get information all the time too. Now I use wired headsets, just because I don't like the Wi-Fi going to my head, and that would be something to look into. But here's why this works. When we engage in intentional stillness, whether it's through things like meditation, deep breathing, or just simply sitting there, and you could be sitting in nature, or you could just be sitting somewhere. You could be walking in nature, but maybe find a place to be truly still, keep your physical body still. When we quiet our overthinking mind and create a space for higher awareness, this is when intuitive messages will become not only more clear, but they'll become more frequent. So you just need to provide the space. There's no space. That intuition is really wanting to speak to you, but we don't have space for it. We don't give it any space. So we can, here's a couple of action steps. We can dedicate 10 minutes a day to stillness. Okay? We can also engage in like a sensory fast. So like I said, get away from your technology. And even, books. I'm a book lover. If I'm not listening to something, I love to sit in the evenings and read. I read a really good fiction or really good nonfiction or whatever it is I'm reading. I really love that, but that's also sensory. That's feeding our intellect. And so we need a disconnect from all of the sensory. So no screens and no noise for at least an hour a day. Okay? Wow. That might seem crazy and a lot to some people, but work up to that. Build up to that. And I know it can be hard for some people if you've got little kids and you've got a life going on that maybe doesn't allow you to take a full hour. Give yourself 10 or 15 minutes of that complete no sensory. Nothing, you're not reading anything, you're not watching, you're not listening. You are literally sitting in stillness, and you're letting the noise clear for that higher sense of yourself to come through. And then this one I really like. Think about practicing single tasking. Okay, we all get so proud of multitasking. We're so proud of all the things that we can do at once. But practice single tasking, because what that does is it clears out the mental clutter. And it's not really something to be proud of, the ability to multitask, unless you're listening to music while you're painting, something like that. And there's of course other situations and examples that you could give and you could think of. In fact, if you have some, I'd love to know what they are, because for me, the example that comes to my forefront is when I paint, I love to listen to music. Okay, so here's a question to ask yourself about this. If your intuition had a voice, what would it say to you right now that you have been too busy to hear? Ask yourself that question. This is a good time on maybe day one of this practice to sit down and just say, all right, if my intuition could speak to me, what would it say? What would it say? Because I've been too busy to hear it, what would it tell me? Okay, so now the next point that I thought about here was we need to strengthen our mind and our body connection. Okay, so this is why. Intuition is not just a mental process. Okay, and your intuition is not just mental. Like, this is really beautiful, because think about when you get a pit in your stomach about something. And then something bad happens, or something you avoided something because you thought, oh, well, I have a bad feeling about that, because you're actually getting a physical response. Okay, so here's what I wrote about that. Intuition isn't just mental. It's deeply connected to our body. So our nervous system, this is why this happens, our nervous system picks up on subtle energy shifts, all right? Because we're all connected. We're connected to not just all people, but to all things, We're connected to this, all the things in this universe, okay? And our gut, our heart, and our body will give us clues before our mind is even able to register them. So think about that. That is amazing to think about. If you become still enough so that your body can give you the clues, your gut, your heart, and your body will give you clues. So you won't just get the gut feeling, you'll get that feeling in your heart. And the interesting thing is I'm sure many of you can relate with this. It's like, how many times have you thought about a person? Like this has happened to me hundreds of times at this point. I'll think about one of my sisters, and I have a lot of sisters, and I'll think about one particular sister, just something about her pops in my mind, or I'm doing something that maybe she taught me to do, or have a memory that resurfaces about this particular sister, and I'll get a phone call in 5 minutes from her, or she'll send me a text and say, "Hey, I was thinking about you. How are you? What are you doing today?" So the thing is, this is the quantum entanglement. And if you just put that up to chance, you're missing the bigger point of this whole thing, right? Okay, so here's how, this is why this works, okay? Your body is always speaking to you. The tightness in your chest, the sinking feeling, the sudden warmth, okay, all of these things, these are signals from your intuition. Just like your body will signal to you if there's a health problem. You might get a fever. You might something is going to trigger that your body is speaking to you and saying there's an issue here. But if you get a spread of warmth over you, and then you just found out that your best friend got engaged or something, something like that, it's always speaking to us, always, okay? If we strengthen this connection, it allows us to receive messages more clearly, okay? So here's what you can do to do that. This is your action step. Okay, we can notice the body's sensations when we're making decisions. So if you have a decision to make, notice the sensation. So you need to start paying attention to the way your body feels. Do you feel expanded or do you feel contracted? So if you have a decision to make about anything, you can use this for anything. I know people who literally use either muscle testing or just their intuition. Should I go on this trip? How long should my trip be? Should I go with this person? And they literally will tune in to the way their body responds. And this is a powerful tool that most of us are not utilizing because it's been beaten out of us, okay? So we notice our body sensations when we make decisions. Do we feel expanded or contracted? Okay, we need to stand, relax, think of a question, and let your body sway forward or back. I think I talked about this either last week or the week before. As far as applied kinesiology, we talk about, like, when I take my supplements every day, I literally can move my hand toward a bottle of something, and I've got, my group of supplements there, and I can tell which ones I need that day. And just because of the energy that I can feel from it, because I'm so in tune at this point. And I've been practicing this for years and decades at this point. So applied kinesiology is basically you're holding something, you stand up, and if your body moves toward it, even slightly, your body's saying, yes, I need that. And then if you don't need it, your body will actually sway back a tiny bit. And you might get a neutral. Your body might just kind of stay in one place, and then you basically say, let your intellect take over. Say, turmeric. This feels right for me today. My intellect saying, I know this is anti-inflammatory. I know that it helps. It's got anti-cancer properties. I know all the benefits of it. Yeah, let's do it. So to me, this is a really beautiful tool that you can start using. You can start using that right away. Here's the thing though, don't overthink it. If you are holding something and you sway slightly forward, again, your intellect's going to jump in and say, oh, you made yourself sway forward. Or no, you made yourself move back. Don't overthink that answer that you get. And then the more and more you practice it and stop letting your intellect butt in, when you get an answer, it's just going to get stronger and stronger, and then it will be an even match for your intellect. They will be able to spar with each other when necessary. Okay, I really love that. And then here's a cool thing that I like to do: keep a decision journal. right? So start looking at your patterns. Note when you followed or ignored your intuition, and then also note the outcome. What was the outcome? Like, I love this one. Because this one is an easy tool that's been around for centuries, since the beginning of humans. If you follow your intuition and your gut feeling, it's never going to lead you wrong. And you might not know what the outcome was if you followed this way and everything turned out good. And you think, well, I probably should have done that. Well, who knows what would have happened if you'd have followed your intellect for whatever reason, rather than the intuitive hit that you got. And there's times when they can mesh with each other. You can use your intuition, and your intellect can pipe in and provide details on what needs to happen and when and where and all of that. I mean, that's a really beautiful way to think about it, right? Okay, so the next idea that I wrote down is we need to tap into more of a subconscious rather than a non-linear thinking, okay? So here's why this is important. Okay, so logic allows us to follow a step-by-step process, but intuition doesn't, okay? It's non-linear. So intuition comes in flashes, it comes in symbols, like numbers, and it comes in feelings. This is the way it comes. It comes in something that you might see off to the side, or you pass a billboard that maybe there was a message there that was whatever. So it doesn't come in a step-by-step process like your intellect. That's how it comes, but your intuition doesn't come that way. So in order to access it, we have to engage it with our subconscious mind, not our conscious mind. Okay, we have to engage our subconscious. It's there. We just don't engage it very often, right? Some of us do when we're sleeping a little bit more, unless we make a conscious effort to engage our subconscious. Crazy, right? So this is how it works. When we bypass the logical brain and engage in activities like free writing, letting things flow, interpreting our dreams, okay, when we start thinking, I wonder what that dream meant, and we basically start to receive profound insights. And I've received so many profound insights, especially when I take a minute and think about something, especially a dream, and I write things down. Because then what I find happens is when I write things down, I can go back and look at it a day later, a week later, even a month later, and I can go, there will be other insights that will kick in that will build on that. Because now I'm remembering the things that came in on an intuitive level, on a subconscious level, and then my conscious intellect brain gets to pipe in along with the intuition. It's a really cool process. So here's some action steps to do with this. Practice free writing. Just, open a journal. This is something, if you've been listening to me for any amount of time, every single time I talk to you, I talk about my journal. And I talk about all the benefits that I get from journaling. This is where you would do free writing. This is for no one but you. This is not even for posterity. If it ends up being for that, awesome. But this is for you. This is for you in this lifetime, in this experience, to help you along the way with everything. It's really amazing. Okay, so here's the way that I like to frame this. Write a question at the top of the page and let your hand move without thinking. Insights may surprise you. So here's how you do this. Start writing something that you think might be inane and kind of no meaning or silly or just the thought, I'm thinking about things that don't mean anything. And just start writing some things. I have had moments where I have filled up 3 pages, 10 pages, 15 pages of just free writing. It's been really a stunning thing. And a lot of people will call this channeling, where you're channeling a lot of times for most of us, it's what our higher self is saying to us. Some people channel other entities and other groups of people or archangels or whatever. But this is what the beauty of free writing and free flowing. It's so amazing, and it's amazing to think about, but it's also more amazing to put it into practice. Okay? Set an intention before you sleep and about lucid dreaming. Okay? Ask a question and then observe your dreams. I like to do this personally with my brain glow. Okay, and I've talked about this before, but ever since I formulated Brain Glow, which was about 11 years ago, uh, my goal was just to take it every day. And I just got in the habit of taking it in the morning. And after a couple years, there was a moment when I had forgotten to take it in the morning. So I took it right before I went to bed, because I know that the herbs are in there. There's no stimulants, there's no caffeine, there's nothing in there that would keep me awake on a biological level. And so I just took it before I went to bed. And that night, I had a very lucid dream that I remembered in detail in the morning. And I didn't really think too much about it until later in the day, when I was still remembering this dream that I had had, which is very uncommon for me. Like, I might remember a dream when I'm still in the half awake, half asleep moments in the morning. And unless I actually get up and write stuff down, I typically forget it within a few minutes, sometimes a couple hours. And I might have an interaction with my husband and say, hey, I had this really odd dream, and then I might share it, and that might help me remember it longer. But for the most part, I'll have a dream and then it leaves. But I had this experience where I had this very lucid dream after taking this Brain Glow right before. And then I started doing it. Then I started doing it on purpose, because I was like, well, is this what caused it? And it doesn't always give me a lucid dream, but it's amazing what it just does for my brain as far as oxygen and circulation. And I believe it's a very intuitive what it gives me. So that to me is practicing lucid dreaming. Okay, so I also think about this. We need to, just before we fall asleep or waking up, focus on a question and allow the images or impressions to come through. And I've done this many times, and I've spoken about this too, as far as shared. When I have a problem, like say a work problem, I will set an intention, and I'm going to let my subconscious go to work solving the problem while I'm sleeping. And a lot of times I'll write it down, because it's very helpful for me when I write things down. And you might be able to set an intention just with a thought process, maybe a quiet 5-minute meditation before you go to bed. Here's an intention. And let your subconscious give you an answer when you wake up. Ask, hey, I have this issue. I have this issue I'm working on. I need some answers to it. And go in with a completely open heart, a completely open mind. Because sometimes an answer might come in that you don't necessarily want to hear. There might be something that you have to do. Maybe you need to swallow your pride and go apologize to someone to change a situation or to fix a problem. It might be that, and you might not want to hear that. So, there's a really beautiful thing about setting an intention for problem solving and letting your subconscious, your higher self, guide you on that. It's pretty powerful. So now the next idea is this. We need to trust and act on small, intuitive nudges. So we need to trust them and act on them, okay? So here's why that's important. Intuition, our gut feeling, it strengthens every time we use it, okay? So if you act on a gut feeling, it will strengthen. It will the goal is to trust it. It has been it's a muscle that is not strong anymore, because think about the strength of your intuition when you're a little kid, when you're 2, you don't even realize it. And it's never nurtured. So use it on the little things, the little nudges, and then trust it. Follow it and trust it. Every time we listen and we act on a small nudge, we reinforce our ability to trust it. The more you ignore it, the more it will fade into the background, okay? The more we ignore these things, they're just going to say, meh, I guess she's not interested. I guess he's not interested. And it basically just kind of atrophies. It just sits there, ready to jump into service whenever you need it. It's the most beautiful God-given tool that we have to take us through this lifetime. Okay? Here's how this works, okay? Intuition often starts as a small urge. It's like an unexplainable feeling that we get, right? Like I was saying before, to call somebody, take a different route, delay a decision. When we act and listen, we'll start noticing how often it leads to something more meaningful. That's it in a nutshell. Now, here's some things that you can do. Next time you get a nudge, act on it immediately, okay? Even if it seems illogical, okay? Like that actually happened to me yesterday when I started meditating. I had the weirdest urge to meditate on a place in my workout space where I have a step that you would use it like in a step class it has a bunch of risers under each end. So it's high enough to be a bench. So I can lay on a bench and I can do some chest press and I can do, so I've built it high enough so that I can use it, but it's very easy to sit on. So I was getting ready to go sit somewhere comfortable so I could do like a 5 or 10 minute, just still a little bit of a meditation, but just whatever, quiet my mind. And my instinct, my gut said, go sit on that bench. Why don't you sit over there? I mean, it wasn't demanding or bossy or anything. It was just simply, why don't you sit over there? And I had to go from where I was going, which I was going to a big comfy couch. I had to go to a different space, a different room to where my workout room is. And then it's not comfortable. There's no back on it. But I didn't even question it. I just was like, okay. And so I sat on the bench and I made myself comfortable, and then it was like, you need to sit on the floor next to it and lean up against it. I was like, okay. And it's a very hard floor underneath, but it's okay. There was a towel on the bench, and so I put the towel on the floor and I just slipped down onto the floor, and that's where I spent my meditation. And I had some really, really, really beautiful things come in, and I was only there for about 15 minutes. And so that the whole point of this is, when you get these nudges that seem illogical, follow them. Just do it. And I don't know what the purpose was for me to be sitting in that particular spot and then just be guided to go to the floor. And the space where I was, the floors were there. It's a cement floor. Now the cement is painted, so it's not hard to sit on. I mean, it's very hard, but it's a clean spot. And it seemed illogical. Well, why, first of all, if I have a comfortable place, should I go sit on a hard bench? And why, if I'm on this bench that's fairly comfortable, why is my intuition telling me to sit on the floor? And I'm thinking, just now talking through this with you, that it was because the floor is cement and you can ground. You can literally ground your physical body to the earth through cement. Now that I'm thinking about it, which it would make sense, because I had the most beautiful insights, and I had to actually kind of go through the list of things I was thinking, and then it journaled immediately afterward. And there were some amazing things that came through with plants and plant medicine and plants that are trying to talk to me, and plants that are, it was really, really, really beautiful. So let's see, where was I? Okay, so even if it seems illogical, so here's an experiment for you to do. Okay, so when you're choosing a path, whether it's literal or figurative, all right, go with your first impression before your mind takes over. Okay, don't let your mind take over, because it's always going to out-intellect your intuition, always. Okay, so here's a question to ask yourself. When was the last time you followed a small intuitive nudge, and what happened as a result? So if you don't remember, if you never, you don't follow your intuition, it's time to start. But when was the last time you did, and what was the outcome if you did? I would personally love to know if there was something. I mean, I bet I would have hundreds of people. I could ask 100 people and they would tell me, because I think we all have some instance in our life when we could think, oh, well, I had an intuition to do this rather than this, and here's how this happened. Here's what happened. I think it would be very fascinating. Okay, so the next idea that I wrote is we need to strengthen our inner sensing. So there's something that's called clairintuitive, okay? So this is something that I think is really fascinating. So let me go over this first part first. Okay, so this is why it's important. We all have intuitive senses. But they've been dulled by years of ignoring them. Okay, strengthening them will help us tune in more easily to intuitive information, okay? So here's how this works. There's clairvoyance, which is seeing. When someone says they're a clairvoyant, they can see things. They can see their uncle who passed away. Maybe they can see your uncle who passed away. They're clairvoyant. Okay, that is a intuitive gift. That is a gift that we have. There's clairsentience, which is feeling. All of us have all of these things. But some people have worked on these and tuned into them, and they've strengthened them. Okay, there's clairaudience, which is hearing. Like some people will say, "Oh, I heard my dad. My dad's been gone for a while, but my dad, his voice dropped in and said this to me." So, the clairaudience is the hearing, okay? There's claircognizance. Claircognizance, that's knowledge, okay? That is a knowing. Do you just have, say you have a decision to make and you just know that A is the right one rather than B. You don't have to explain it. Maybe you don't understand it yourself, but you have a knowing that that's the right decision. I would say one of the, it's just brought up this in my mind, but there were many times as I was, so I come from this huge family, as most of you know. I have a lot of sisters and I have brothers. But with my sisters in particular, when we were all having our babies, at this point, all of my sisters, and probably all of my brothers now, everyone's had their kids. But I remember when I would get pregnant, and when, one sister has 5 kids, one sister has 4, I just have 2, one has 3. Like, there's a lot of babies in our family, and they're all grown-ups now, pretty much, except there's a couple of kids my siblings who still have little kids. But I remember saying, I have this feeling I'm having a boy. And with both of my kids, who were both born in the early 80s, so let's be clear, this was before everyone knew and had to find out what they were having. I didn't know what I was having until I had them. And the same with most of my sisters. So we would have this inner knowing that I don't remember a time when we were wrong. Like, it's been so long since this happened, but that example just popped into my brain. So all of these are all natural abilities for every single one of us. Every one of us. I don't care how young or how old you are. You can jump into these abilities if you're 85, if you're 25, if you're 10. If you have a 10-year-old child, nurture these gifts in them because we all have them, right? Okay, so they can all be refined. They can all be woken up from the dead and refined. Okay, so we need to practice exercises like objective reading, remote sensing, and energy awareness, which all heighten our perception. Okay, so here's some things. Here's a couple of action steps that you can take. Okay, so this is interesting. Hold an unknown object and describe its energy or history. So, okay, and that's just what that's called is blind object reading. And you might just think this is dumb because I have no idea. But this is again where you just have to go, this part of my intuition has not been nurtured and I don't know. So I'm going to practice. Okay, that's actually, this sounds like a lot of fun to me. Okay, remote sensing. Before we enter a room, pause and sense its energy. We all know you could walk into a room and feel the energy. If there's a positive vibe going on, say at a wedding, you walk into a wedding where there's lots of love and joy and it's a heightened experience for everyone, you're going to feel the energy of love and you're going to feel the energy of connectiveness. Now, if you walk into a wedding where the bride just left the groom at the altar, then the energy in the room is going to be very, very different. I mean, those are extreme examples that, of course, you can feel the energy of those, but practice that, okay? Before checking your phone, guess who texted or called you, okay? In fact, as I'm sitting here recording this right now, my phone just gave a couple of vibrations over there. I probably have a couple of texts or maybe a phone call. So after I'm done, I'm gonna do that. I think that's a wonderful idea. Okay, so here's a question that's thought-provoking for you. Which intuitive sense do you feel is the strongest in you? of all these things, okay? And how would we not only develop it further, but how would you develop the other things? Like, I would love to have just an absolute clairvoyance and be able to see. I would be able to see, love to be able to see things. I would love to be able to hear. Like, if my dad had a message for me, I would love to be able to have that just drop in immediately when I needed it. So I think there's ways to develop these further. Okay, so I have two more ideas. So the next idea is we need to limit our intellectual overload. Okay? Because we get it all the time, it's a constant stream of thinking we have to know by book learning and smarts and all of this stuff. We need to reduce finally, let the intellect have a break. The intellect is powerful in all of us at this point. And even as kids who are growing up and still learning things, let their intellect have a break while you help them nurture their intuitive side. Okay, so here's why this is important. A constantly stimulated brain leaves no room for our intuition to rise. If it's constantly stimulated, there's no way that your intuition can pop its head up and give you some guidance. The brain's processing power gets consumed by all the external noise, and it drowns out our inner wisdom. It always drowns it out. So this is how it works. By reducing unnecessary intellectual input, such as excessive social media, news, and over-analysis of everything we listen to and watch, because not only do we get all the stimulation, then we freaking overanalyze it. If the people on the news or whatever we're watching doesn't overanalyze it for us, we overanalyze it ourselves. We think about it over and over and over again. We think about this scenario and that scenario and what if this and what if that, and then we're in fear and then we're in rage and then we're like, oh, now we feel love because we see this side. This is a pure overstimulation of all of your intellectual senses. So your intuition is just like dead in the water, right? Okay, the brain's processing power gets consumed by external noise, drowning out the inner wisdom. Okay, so this is how it works. When we reduce unnecessary intellectual input, such as all this stuff, we create space for our intuition insights to surface naturally. We just need to create space. So here's some things you can do. We can reduce the unnecessary consumption, first of all, and we can take intuitive days. So you know how we take a day to go to the spa, or take a day to go for golfing with the boys, or whatever your jam is. You take a day, you take a relaxation day, you take a day off. Take an intuitive day where you're saying, I'm gonna just tune into my intuition instead of always overstimulating my intellect. Set aside those days strategically. That would make a huge difference. Okay, so here's a question you can ask yourself. What information am I consuming daily that may be clouding my intuitive clarity? What is it? What is it that's stopping me from working that intuition? I can tell you, just having really spent some time thinking about this week, this has really put a motivational spin on what I need to do personally to strengthen that intuitive muscle. And I feel like at this point for me it's very strong, but I'm excited to see where else I can go with it. 100%. My phone is blown up. Sometimes what we have is we have this group text that goes through because my sibling group is so large. Sometimes there's one with 9 of us on it. There's one with 11 of us on it. And then we've got grown kids and their kids sending So sometimes I'll open my phone and there will be like 40 text messages from like one or two text streams because there's so many of us. So this could be anything, but my phone's kind of blown up over here. Okay, so here's the last idea that I have in this. We need to ask our intuition questions directly. And it sounds illogical, it sounds crazy, makes you sound like you might be off your rocker a little, but we need to ask our intuition questions directly. Ask, what is the point of this? And then listen for a second. Just don't ask the question with an iPod in your ear, with an iPad or a podcast that's going on in your ear, and then you ask a question of your intuition, but you're getting the stimulation. So ask directly. Okay, so here's why this is important. Our intuition is always responding. You need to remember that. It's always there. Even if it hasn't been worked very much, it's going to go, oh, there you are. You're finally looking at me and noticing me, and I'm here. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to be there for you. Okay, our intuition is always responding. But most people don't even ask it for guidance. Most people. When we consciously engage with it, we're opening a direct channel of communication. Use your conscious mind to engage your intuition consciously, okay? Here's how this is how this works. When we sit in silence and we pose a question to our intuition, our first gut response is usually the right one. Before the mind jumps in to rationalize it or push doubt in there. So then your goal is to do what I suggested earlier. Go with your gut instinct. Learn to trust it and know that it will never lead you wrong. Okay? So we need to sit quietly, place a hand on your heart and ask, what do I need to know right now? This is something that, again, I've said this 100 times. I sit at my journal in the morning. I sit with it in the morning. Early, I open it up and I say, what does my higher self want to tell me today? And then I just hang out. I just sit there. I might sip on my tea, but other than that, I just hang out. I don't have any expectations. I do know that there's things that are going to be happening that day that I could probably use a great intuitive hit from. I could use a guidance on what does my day need to look like today. So sit quietly and put a hand on your heart and ask, what do I need to know right now? And what's my next aligned step? What's the next best decision for me? I mean, maybe you have something really hard you're going through and you really need some guidance on something. And we know sometimes how bad it can turn out when you talk to a trusted friend or a trusted person, and not always. Like, that can be a really valuable resource, but they might give us some guidance that is not right for us. And then they might press us to do this right thing because they're guiding us. And so before you go do that, tune in here first. Okay? So here's a question you want to ask yourself. If you ask your intuition a question right now, what's the very first answer that comes up? And then what you want to do is you don't want to analyze it. You just want to notice it. Don't analyze it and overanalyze it and doubt it and discard it. Just notice. Just notice it. Notice it. Okay, so here's my final thought on this. Our intuition is not lost, okay? It's simply waiting for us to turn toward it again. It's like something that's over to the side here. There's a clock up on my wall over here. And I don't ever look at it because I have my clock on my computer and I have a clock on my phone, and it's there. It's always there. It's always there telling me the time. And when I do notice it sometimes, like every couple of years, it'll be like, oh, I need a new battery. So I'll put another battery in it, even though I don't really ever pay attention to it. But it's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful clock with, beautiful face on it, and the arms go around. But I don't really notice it. But the thing is to notice, okay? So let me read you this again, because this is the thought-provoking question of the week. If you ask your intuition a question right now, what's the very first answer that comes up? Don't analyze it. Just notice it, okay? Our intuition is not lost. It's simply waiting for us to turn toward it again. The more you listen, trust, and act on its guidance, the stronger it will become. There's no doubt in my mind that this is a key piece of us evolving as a human species. I believe that we are in such amazing times, and I think that there appears to be all this news that comes at us every day, and all of the chaos and the confusion, and maybe the clarity, maybe all the stuff that comes at us every day. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to discard that, but I'm also not going to get in, get my panties up in a bunch because of stuff, and I'm going to really look at the world the way that it is. Step outside, get away from my stuff. What are my neighbors doing? Oh, they're working in their yard. They're shoveling their snow. Oh, they're out walking. The world is going on, and as we raise our consciousness and we raise our intuition, think about the difference that will shift as humanity starts to pay attention to that piece of us that's given to us to guide us. It's literally as easy as tuning back into it. Just tuning in a channel, like on a radio, like the old-fashioned radio. Tune into that different channel on Spotify, whatever. It's just a different channel that we don't use, but it's really two big channels that deserve the exact same amount of attention. And I really think at this point the intellect needs to take a little bit of a break, for my opinion. And I'm not saying don't stop learning. I'm not saying that at all. But I would love to know what you think about this. I believe that our intuition it never leads us wrong, and you hear that. Oh, I had a gut feeling about that. Oh, I knew I shouldn't have done that. How many times have you heard that or said that? Hundreds probably at this point. Anyway, I can't believe we're in March already. I think it's an absolutely amazing time to be here. I believe the things that is being unraveled and opened up to humanity due to the access of information that we can get. This is where the balance comes in, because it is good to get this information, because then we can go, okay, intuition, what do you tell me about this? And then you will use your knowing, you'll use your instinct, and it will guide you through these really interesting times. So thanks for being here today, you guys. Like I said, I love this topic. I think this is really one of the most powerful things that we can start flexing and using this intuitive muscle that we have. Let's all get a stronger intuition. So thanks for tuning in. Like I said, have a beautiful, beautiful first week in March. I wish the best for you, lots of love, and we'll see you next week.